All right, let's go. All right, Tim, what do you got today? Today, we're going to answer our questions today.
Right, on through Twitter and Facebook.
Not too much going on in hockey.
No, but I got to talk. We should talk about what happened the other day with you and the Coyote and the dog. So what happened was Dad was over our house. We lived not too far from QEW, which is a major highway. We're kind of in the suburbs, but we're definitely not, rural. And so say Dad was at the end of the driveway, and we hear a commotion, and a big coyote,
a big one,
like a big one, comes running up,
making a funny sound.
He was barking, and I guess it was either a husky or a Malamute.
No, it wasn't a Malamute. It was a husky.
Was chasing him, and it had a harness on him. Mm-hmm. And so he went up, and then he crossed the street. He was only about 10 feet from you when he ran by. He didn't even know you were there. He was too busy. And the husky was after him. And then they went across the street, went into a vacant lot, turned around, come running back up the road. And then I think about halfway, the coyote said, "Well, wait a minute. I'm the wild animal here." Turned around, and started chasing the.
The husky, he was just kidding.
Well, Coyote didn't think he was.
No, he did. And the Coyote, yeah, you're right. The Coyote didn't think he was.
So,
anyhow, I was just across
so who
the
do you
street.
think, Cindy? Coyote and a husky, they get into a fight. You're the animal expert. Who wins?
If they were, and it was a real fight, I as much as I love the coyotes and their, instinct, I would say the husky would win because I think out of all the breeds,
he was big. He was good size too.
I think out of all the breeds of dogs, I think that huskies are the closest to being like the wolf.
He was just smirking and laughing.
Yeah, he was just having fun.
He was having fun.
Well, that's when the Coyote was chasing him. He did look like he had a smirk on his face.
Yeah.
But you should
and
tell
the
about,
other one was going.
He was scared. But you tell about the time you had a great big American staff. And we had a kind of a little field in our backyard, and you took him for a walk.
I took Blue in the back there, and I cannot remember a more beautiful looking, and it looked like it had red fur, and it just looked beautiful. And they were nose to nose, and I didn't want to say anything because then they would have started.
So you took your dog off the leash, and he ran up the hill.
He ran up the hill, and he was nose to nose with this coyote. I think he was a coyote. I kept calling him. I kept, nicely calling him. And
you didn't panic.
I didn't panic.
That's the main thing.
Don't panic with those two guys.
Those two are just ready to go at it. Don't panic.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, and that thing followed us right up to the hill.
Well, we had an interesting thing. And you were saying that in the field behind us, there was coyotes, and they've kind of left because there's a lot more construction in the area. But one of your favorites, Dr. Suzuki, did a story on one that was in the back there.
Exactly. I mean, I watch, the nature of things all the time, and he was doing a study on what they call coy dogs, which is probably
who was Dr. Suzuki?
Yes.
Yeah. There, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was doing trying to get people to understand a lot of the times the coyotes are getting a little bit more bolder, or they're getting bolder, is because they're mixing with domestic dogs. So they're called coy dogs. So this is what he was trying to get along.
No, I don't understand. What are they called?
Coy, like coyote, a coy dog, like half coyote, half dog.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a really big one around here, and they collared it. And it was showing it on his show. And it was Mississauga. It was right by Mississauga Road in the underpass at the QEW. And I go, I know that dog. I know that coyote. I know that area that he was showing was right here, right practically in Tim's backyard.
Yeah. We saw the coyote. And the collar looked so uncomfortable. Like it was nice and hot. You look and you go, man, you're torturing that poor thing.
I know. You don't like tight things, right, Dad?
Yeah, they had them tight fitting.
Yeah, so they had it. But So that's a lot of times when you see these dogs. That's why they're getting a bit bolder.
But I have to say, Husky looked like he was having fun. He was just having fun.
Yeah, these.
I don't know what. And then I started thinking he got away some way.
You're lucky you didn't have your dog Jake with you.
Oh, I had a little Westland eye.
I will never understand people. I know we're off topic on dogs. I could talk about dogs. I just don't understand people putting a harness on a husky. I mean, I work at a vet clinic and they pull. I get they pull sleds in Alaska.
I don't know.
But why would you put a harness
You
on
had a harness
husky?
on.
And they pull and they pull and you look at the people. You can't tell anyone about their dogs. So, I mean,
How did we get into? About the?
Don't get me
good job. I didn't have that little Westie with me. He'd have been dead by now.
Well, he would have went after the Coyote.
He would have went after. He would have went after both of them.
Don't be bad mouthing coyotes around here. There's enough of people that bad mouth coyotes. So I still haven't met a person yet that said that coyote came up and took my dog right off the leash. And you always hear other people's stories about that, but you never actually meet the person that this actually happened to. And they say it all the time, bad mouthing coyotes. But
talking about a fighting dog, what do you got, Tim?
Okay, so we got an email from your buddy Joe Warmington.
Joe Warmington,
and he sent an email from Scott Lewis, and he wanted to know about a guy named Francis Roggeveen. And did you know him? Did you play against him?
I played on 3 teams with him. I should know him. And it was in one of the fights I was in. I looked at him after the fight, and he had a split lip. It was all blood and everything. And I said, Frank, I don't remember you in a fight. Like, how did you get cut like that? He says, when you brought your fist back to punch that guy, you hit. I was close. You cut me, and I'd cut him too. So I cut 2 guys with the same punch.
Got to be a record.
Yeah. So
I knew Frank, and he was a good guy, and he was a good defenseman. He's what everybody's looking for now.
Yeah.
A defensive defenseman.
I always look at these guys and say timing's everything. How much money would they be making today? So defensive defenseman minimum's $3 million, $4 million, and you would have made the NHL.
I'd have made it, yeah.
So how much do you think you'd been making?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm making about $5 million. Well, I could fight. I used to get the first one in, and go from there. and if you,
you got some. That one year you got 20-some points.
I used to get a point. I averaged 6 goals, which wasn't bad.
Yeah,
6 goals a year. That's not bad
for a defensive defenseman.
Yeah.
So just think, Sonny, Dad could have been making $5 million a year.
Mom would have had fun.
I was making 45. I remember going in with Punch Imlach. I know I told a story, but I'm going to tell it anyhow. I went in and he said, "There's your contract." And I said, "Yeah." So I signed. He says, "Well, don't you want to argue with me?" I said, "Are you going to give me more money?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, what's the sense of arguing?" And then the next thing I knew, he was in the National Hockey League and he was winning Stanley Cups.
When he was coaching you, did you think that he was going to make the...
Never. I never thought a little bald guy. But anyhow,
you said Boston got him to send him to protect the players from Shore
I don't
and
know
Springfield.
Whatever it was the best year that we ever had. That Shore couldn't talk to the players for a whole year. It was beautiful. And then he left and back to the Crimea, as they say. So I knew Frank, and Frank was a good defensive defenseman, and he'd be making about $5 million now.
Okay, Dad, Tony E. from Facebook says, Don, you played with a lot of different teams and had a lot of...
Unfortunately.
Yep, and a lot of different teammates, and you came across a lot of people.
I did.
Did you ever have a teammate lined up on the trolley tracks and let up on him because, you knew him from before? And so basically, did you ever nail a really good friend of yours?
And the guy I let up on was Brian Kilray. I remember it was in Springfield, and everybody saw it too. It was right out in the open, and Crows. I was playing for Rochester then, and I had him in, and he had his head down. He was cutting across like Gilmore did that time.
All right,
yeah,
McSorley got him. Yeah,
I could have put him out, and I boo or something. I would like to get your head up or something. I forget what I said to him, and. I don't know if he would ever remember that. But anyhow, it was Brian Kilray. I had in the trolley tracks, and I could have killed him.
Well, Brian Kilray, a lot of people come up to me and say, your dad reminds me so much of my dad and all that. A lot of people say that. But I have to say, out of all the people that we know, Brian Kilray reminds me so much of you in your mannerisms, the way you think. And I know
He's more honest than I was.
Yeah. I know you guys are best friends and really good friends. And
we don't talk much. We phone once in a while. The top.
So let me ask you something. You were playing for Brian for how many years? 3 years, basically.
I think I played with him 3 years.
3 years. So. People who don't know Brian Kilray is, he coached junior hockey, Ottawa
most
60s.
wins ever in junior hockey.
Yeah, so he's the greatest coach in junior hockey, most wins. Could you see that he could have been a good coach?
Oh yeah, you could.
In when you were playing,
he didn't want to. He didn't want to get into coaching, and he did get into coaching. But you could tell he was going to be a good coach. And I didn't think he'd be that good a coach, but. He had a little more courage than I did. I don't know if I would have stand up the shore like he did. He was the captain. But someday we'll tell that long story. Or did we tell it?
Yeah, we got to get all the facts right. So
anyhow, get all the facts right. Brian Kilray was a top-notch guy, and I like him.
Cindy and Dad, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Spreads.ca. They're a Canadian-owned online casino and sportsbook. And if you sign up now and use the promo GRAPES, they'll match your deposit up to $250. You get 10 spins on the big wheel for some big dough. And your first sports bet, they'll spot you $25. And if you think you know who's
good.
It is. If you think you know who's going to win the Stanley Cup, now's the time to bet because you get big odds, right? Because
I think somebody and one of the tweets asked me, who do I think was going to win tonight? And I said Boston.
Boston, yeah.
Well, why not Boston?
I think Boston's in the top 5. I think it goes Leafs, Colorado, Vegas, and Carolina are the top.
Oh, they don't have Boston in there?
Then Boston's they're right after that. So
well, I'll pick Boston. And
again, you're picking the Leafs. So when the mic's off, you go, don't count out the Leafs. But
don't count off the Leafs because they've changed.
This is a recording.
No, I'm still with the Leafs, and I still I think in one of the questions here. They asked, what was
okay,
it?
So going to this is Gail B. Lee from Twitter. We'll talk about the Leafs. Generally, when a GM is hired, he fires the old coach and puts in a guy behind the bench that he likes. What do you think of Trevelling, who's the new GM of the Leafs, keeping Keefe? And can you change the culture in the room with the same coach?
I will say when I saw him point up above, that remember when they put
so what happened? I think we told this before that against Montreal they had an emergency. The Leafs had an emergency backup goalie. It was from university, and they were hammering Montreal 7-0. And then with about 2 minutes, they put the goalie in.
Yeah,
and it was kind of it was a little bit of a slap in the face to Montreal.
Yeah,
and somebody asked Keefe after that, and he
pointed upstairs. He says that wasn't my decision, and I knew right then. Now let's just go on. I think Keith did a pretty good number on talking to Trevelling because he said, this is what I wanted to do, and he's got a tough team now. Probably the toughest team in the league right now.
Probably, yeah.
I would say the toughest team in the league right now. And I think that Trevelling, is that how you speak?
Trevelling.
He saw he had the perfect coach because I don't think he was calling the shots last year.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you were in Boston, you changed the culture in the dressing room after the first year.
Oh, boy.
I mean, you went in and you took down all the Stanley Cup pictures. I mean,
I remember Frosty crying, the trainer, assistant trainer. He says, this is my life. I said, I don't care if it's your life or not. I said, they're all coming down. And we took down all the pictures of the guys winning the Stanley Cup. And he was crying.
See, now most people would think, oh, that would inspire the team that you had to.
I didn't believe in that. I believed in this is our club and this is the way we were going to be.
Right. So you bring in Stan Jonathan and he brings a great big beautiful war bonnet and put it on the head. They had like a Bruins, a bear,
that
right?
Was bad. That was bad.
They put there was a stuffed bear head, and he put the war bonnet on it. It really looked nice.
It did look nice, and he says, "I'll leave it there. Nobody will touch it." He says, "They'll know it's mine."
But Dad, you said something interesting when we were talking on the porch about this. Is that do the players know that if a coach is getting, someone's whispering in his ear, and do they lose a little bit of respect for him?
Believe me, they do. And I played in enough teams that I knew. Well, forget Springfield. That was.
Yeah, we won't count that.
We won't talk about Springfield. Oh yeah, you could tell if the owners or general manager or whatever was telling the coach to do something, and he did it, and knowing that it was wrong, then you lost all respect.
So the following year, when they'll know that maybe he doesn't have someone whispering in his ear, they'll respect him a little more.
I think that fear went in because he was sort of a nut. Who was the guy? There was three.
Oh, there was when they played, there was a Keith.
He didn't even shake.
Jefferson's was. Who changed his name to Dalton, and there was a defenseman. Yeah. He was such a wise, I don't know what you call it, Weisenheimer or whatever.
He really was. He was a nut.
He was bad news in the OHL. And David Branch didn't like him. And they won the Memorial Cup.
Yeah.
And Keith was the captain. Keith
he
was captain. So now David Branch has to give him the Stanley Cup or the Calder Cup.
And shake his hand.
Memorial Cup.
Memorial Cup, sorry. And Keith just said something like, "This just must kill you having to give me this cup, huh? This just Branch just said, "Just keep smiling, kid."
Anyhow, and he was a nut when he played, and I think he'll fit right in with this team. And if I had it, I'd find Simmons too. And
yeah, we say the ultimate payback in Florida.
Yeah, I would have the toughest team. If you have the toughest team, people don't want to go in and play your billing. Not like it was before. We go out and play in Toronto and have some fun.
Tell that story quickly. I think we told before, but I always liked George Larocque when he was in Edmonton.
Oh yeah, George come up. Ron and I used to sit up way up high
during the
whatever
morning.
it is. We
morning
sat,
skate.
Morning skate.
We were sitting there, and George Larocque come up, and George, how's everything going and everything? And he says, yeah, good and everything. He says, everybody wants to play us. And I said, George, don't you think it'd be a little different? Don't you think everybody does not want to play us? Geez, I never thought of that.
Okay, Dad, we're running a little bit late talking about Coyotes and Huskies and Barbie dolls, but so we have one last question from Canucks Crazy One, who's Twitter. Grapes, I'm an old-time Canuck fan, and one of my favorite players was Orland Kurtenbach. Did you ever play against him, and do you have any stories of him? So I looked him up. He was born in Cudworth, Saskatchewan. He was 6'2", 200 pounds.
Long arms.
That's right. And was the first captain of the Canucks when they went from into the NHL and scored the first Canucks hat trick.
And I hear that he scored the first Canuck hat trick. That was in the NHL.
Right. Yeah. And the one thing that I found, Cindy, was kind of something was he was during the time of when the WHA, the World Hockey Association, started, and he was offered $150,000.
And that was like $350,000 now.
Yeah, and nobody was making that in the NHL, not very few, for the LA Sharks, and he turned it down. So do you have any stories of Orland Kurtenbach?
He was playing for Buffalo in the American Hockey League, and I was playing for Springfield, and as usual, and we got into a fight along the side of the boards there, and in those days, everybody used to jump on, and we all crowded around. Luckily for me, that his long arms didn't have me. He would have held me out there. Anyhow, I went to throw a punch, and my fingers caught, as I went to throw a punch, my fingers caught on a sweater, and one finger went right in his eye. I never forgot that. Oof. Right in his eye, and I could feel all the stuff. And
so
anyhow,
did you just pull it out?
And I just pulled my finger out, and it's everybody around the league thought I did it on purpose. And I didn't do it on purpose.
But that's good. Everybody thought you were crazy.
Yeah,
man.
They thought I was nuts.
Hey, did you hear Cherry poked a guy in?
Yeah, and I didn't do that. So that's the thing I remember about Orland Kurtenbach. He was a big guy, and he'd be making about $11 million now.